Few films have earned the dreaded NC-17 rating, but how far is too far? For these films, the line between artistry and exploitation is a thin one. Spoilers ahead. Blonde tells the story of Marilyn Monroe, and it doesn't shy away from the darker parts of her life. There's plenty of nudity throughout the movie, but the scene that likely tipped it into NC-17 territory is one that depicts President John F. Kennedy sexually assaulting Monroe.
Baby, don't be shy. Come on.
That particular scene created extra controversy, as it's one of the moments in the film that isn't based in fact. Several outlets reported on this, with Glamour summing it up, saying, "There are no claims or records of JFK sexually assaulting Marilyn." The response to Blonde was heavily divided, with some calling the film exploitative and criticizing the moments, like the shocking JFK scene, in which the film took creative liberties. Director Andrew Dominik said he knew his film would strike a nerve with some viewers, but he was genuinely shocked that it ended up getting slapped with an NC-17 rating, telling Vulture, "I was surprised. I thought we'd colored inside the lines." And if you want to hear more about nude scenes that caused real-life trouble for the people who were in them, check out this video next. While Killer Joe might be best remembered for its shocking bursts of violence and brutality, the film also contains two shocking sex scenes. The first involves Dottie, played by Juno Temple, who strips down for a full frontal nude scene early on. But the second is far more disturbing, despite both characters being fully clothed. This is because Joe, played by Matthew McConaughey, humiliates Gina Gershon's character by forcing her to fillet a chicken bone while he grunts and moans with satisfaction. It might be one of the most disturbing sexual acts ever put on the screen, and it's easy to see why it helped land the movie an NC-17 rating. The topic of sex addiction is inherently rife with explicit material, so it's no surprise to find the 2011 drama Shame on this list. The film focuses on Michael Fassbender's character, Brandon, a man constantly seeking casual sex. One of the film's early NC-17-worthy moments is a montage of Brandon's hookups, clip after clip of him walking out of his bedroom following a fresh sexual encounter, passing the camera fully nude with nothing to block his genitals from sight. But that's not all of it. There's also sex in a back alley, a threesome with sex workers, and a same-sex encounter with another man at a gay bar. Still, the most disturbing element of the film might be Brandon's borderline incestuous relationship with his sister.
She feels very deeply that she and her brother should be closer, and I think that's what she wants from him.
Shame implies that the reason the siblings have such a complicated sexual history is because they were molested together as children. While Shame comes pretty close to incestuous content, 2003's The Dreamers basically dives headfirst into the subject. In the film, Matthew goes to Paris as an exchange student, where he meets and befriends twin siblings Isabelle and Theo.
We thought you might like to move your things here.
But you barely even know me.
This is where we get to know you.
However, when he's invited to stay with them, he discovers that the twins really do share everything. He sees them sleeping nude together and engages in sexual games with them. It's a passionate love triangle in which all three pursue each other relentlessly. The film contains explicit sexual scenes, including full frontal nudity from all three of its main actors, and a sampler of all sorts of sexual acts. Paul Verhoeven's much-maligned erotic drama Showgirls tells the story of Nomi Malone, who comes to Las Vegas with dreams of becoming a famous dancer. She starts working in a strip club and soon strikes up a rivalry with local diva Crystal Connors and a relationship with Crystal's boyfriend, Zack. As you might expect, Showgirls contains many scenes only suitable for adults, but one scene in particular pushed the movie well into NC-17 territory. Despite being the only genuinely decent person in the film, the character of Molly endures a horrific sexual assault in the film's most controversial scene. Actor Gina Rivera avoided talking about the scene and the film in general for many years, but she finally opened up about the experience during a 2020 interview with Yahoo Entertainment, saying, "When you do a scene like that, your body doesn't know it's not real. I don't know if I would have taken the movie if I had understood that." Every director reacts to an NC-17 rating differently. Some don't care in the slightest, and others lobby for the Motion Picture Association to reconsider its decision. Ira Sachs didn't hold back when his 2023 film Passages got slapped with an NC-17, telling the Los Angeles Times, "We hunger for movies that are in any proximity to our own experience, and to find a movie like this, which is then shut out, is to me depressing and reactionary. Particularly in a culture which is already battling in such extreme ways the possibility of LGBT imagery to exist." The movie's distributor managed to technically avoid the NC-17 rating by releasing Passages unrated, but that still affected the movie's reach. In Passages, a man upends his relationship with his husband after starting an affair with a woman.
It's my party and my husband doesn't want to dance with me.
I'll dance with you.
The film carefully analyzes the relationships between its protagonists, but because that means seeing them at their most intimate, things get pretty explicit. There are a handful of sex scenes throughout the movie, but a long continuous take scene showing two characters having sex in a movie editing booth is what most likely tipped passages toward an NC-17 rating. Written and directed by Pedro Almodovar, 2004's Bad Education is a heartbreaking story about navigating the intricacies of sexual identity. The movie follows Spanish film director Enrique Godet, who reconnects with his first love, Ignacio Rodriguez, and Ignacio, now called Angel, suggests he uses a short story called The Visit as the basis for a new project. Working through the story, Enrique relives parts of his childhood when he fell in love with Ignacio at a Catholic boarding school, and the two of them were eventually torn apart and abused by the school's principal, Father Manolo. If you were to watch Bad Education without knowing its rating, you'd probably be surprised to learn that the movie is NC-17. That's because compared to most of the movies on this list, Bad Education isn't that graphic. The moment that gave the film its rating is a 2-second clip depicting oral sex. You don't actually see genitalia on screen, but a head bobbing up and down was enough for the Motion Picture Association. According to publicist Jessica Uzon, the filmmakers pushed back against the decision. The MPA stood firm, but producers refused to remove the scene. As Uzon told the New York Times, it's a film for adults. It's not very surprising that a movie called Zack and Miri Make a Porno initially got rated NC-17. The film stars Seth Rogen and Elizabeth Banks as best friends and roommates who are short on cash and desperate for any way to pay their bills. They decide that with the help of a few friends and strangers, they'll break into the pornography business to turn their lives around.
The porn I liked when I was a kid, it was always like a spoof of a popular movie, like Edward Penis Hands.
Naturally, Zack and Miri has a handful of sex scenes, though most of them are a good deal tamer than those in other movies that made this list. According to director Kevin Smith, the MPA took issue with 2 scenes in particular. In an interview with Vulture, Smith explained, "The initial NC-17 rating for Zack and Miri Make a Porno was predicated on the thrusting in one scene and the shot." Smith was referring to a moment in which one of Zack's friends gets covered in feces while filming an adult scene, insisting, "I made sure everything kind of worked within the boundaries," and the MPA were like, "This movie will never get an R as long as that scene is in the movie. You got to cut out the shot altogether." Smith argued that the comic nature of the sex scenes meant his film should be rated R. He took his case to an appeal and, to his surprise, he won. No matter how many films you've seen, Blue is the Warmest Color is likely to be one of the most intensely sexual films you'll ever watch. The movie follows the passionate love affair that explodes between Emma and Adele and is filled with graphic sex scenes, to the point that the film has been the subject of some controversy. The centerpiece of Blue is the Warmest Color is a 7-minute sex scene between Adele and Emma that features all manner of different sexual acts and positions, and it was these scenes that drew some ire for the mostly well-received film. For example, Jay Hoberman of Art Info wrote, "The most discomfiting thing about Blue is that it ultimately feels like a menage a trois involving the actors and the camera, staged for the benefit of the director." Elsewhere, there is a highly explicit scene of Adele pleasuring herself, a heterosexual encounter with full frontal nudity, and several other highly sexual scenes. 1990's Henry and June sparked controversy when it became the first NC-17 movie after the X rating was sidelined. Written and directed by Philip Kaufman, the movie is part biopic and part historical fiction. It tells the story of American writer Henry Miller and his wife June moving to Paris in the 1930s. There, they meet Anaïs Nin, and the three of them strike up a steamy affair. Sex scenes are front and center throughout the movie, and that was enough for it to inaugurate the new rating. The real-life Miller was well known for including all sorts of tales of debauchery in his novels and short stories. His 1934 novel Tropic of Cancer was based on the experiences he had in Paris, and the book actually changed obscenity laws in the United States. After the novel was banned in Florida, the Supreme Court ended up ruling in the book's favor and opened the door to a new wave of steamy literature in the mainstream. We know what you're thinking. A film called Nymphomaniac is obviously going to be rated NC-17. However, that wasn't the plan from the beginning. Originally, Lars von Trier's lengthy tale about a self-diagnosed sex addict was meant to have 2 different versions. One is what exists today, and the other would have been an edited-down version that would be more in line with a typical R-rated movie. But von Trier struggled to edit the film, and in the end, the studio decided to back his true vision for the movie.
It's all so exotic. So broad-minded.
Nymphomaniac explores the life story of 50-year-old Joe, played by Charlotte Gainsbourg, who's discovered beaten up in an alley by a man named Seligman. He brings her home to take care of her injuries, and she starts to tell him about her many wild sexual experiences. A plethora of sex scenes and extreme close-up shots of every imaginable body part guaranteed the film's rating. While some viewers may have been turned away by the graphic nature of the film, even more were probably put off by the full movie's 4-hour runtime. It was later released in 2 parts with no MPA rating. Few films are as emotionally difficult to watch as Requiem for a Dream. This intense psychological drama from Darren Aronofsky follows 4 characters who go from being users of their respective substances to becoming desperately addicted.
Purple in the morning, blue in the afternoon, orange in the evening.
Its NC-17 rating comes from the lengths that the quartet goes to in hopes of getting their fix. Perhaps the most explicit moments feature Marion, who becomes a sex worker to obtain more heroin. Her story culminates with a series of lesbian sex acts as a group of businessmen jeer and holler at the participants with excitement. Elsewhere, there's a brutal scene of shock therapy, and another character has his arm amputated due to an intravenous infection that turns gangrenous. Absolutely no one gets a happy ending, and in the final sequence, all 4 curl themselves into the fetal position in hopes of escaping their horrific traumas. While Requiem for a Dream may be the least sexual of the films on this list, it might also be the best, and is worth watching for anyone who can handle such extreme subject matter.